They say nothing good happens after midnight. Most people lock their doors, draw their blinds, and trust the dark will pass them by if they pretend it isn't there. But I've learned the truth. The dark doesn't pass you by. It waits, watches, marks the seconds. And if you're not careful, it chooses you. My name. People whisper it like a rumor. Shadow Man, I didn't pick it. The streets did. Unlike most names born out of fear, it's stuck. For weeks now, the city has been holding its breath. You can taste the tension in the air. Heavy as cigarette smoke and copper blood. For bodies in fortnight. Every one of them dead at the same exact time. 12 a.m., not a minute early, not a second late. Like clockwork, the press calls him the Midnight Killer. I call him something else, a message. Because killers like this don't choose patterns for fun. They choose them because they mean something. They want someone to see it. And maybe that someone is me. I don't scare easy. Fear is just the body's way of telling you to run when you know damn well you're going to stay. But I'll admit this much. When the clock hands line up, when the bells toll 12, even I feel the city's pulse tighten. The silence thickens. Like the whole world is waiting for the scream that always comes. And it always comes. The first victim was a cab driver, 42 years old, works the late shift, driving drunks and dreamers through rain-slick streets. They found him slumped over his wheel, eyes wide open, throat cut clean, no money taken, no fight, just a message in blood smeared across the dashboard. Time's up. The second was a lawyer, corporate shark, the kind who buried justice under paperwork and smiled while doing it. He didn't make it home from his office that night. Security cameras caught the lobby clock ticking to midnight, and then static. When the tape came back, he was sprawled on the floor, heart stopped, lips blue, no wounds this time, just a single clock hand snapped off an old wristwatch jammed between his teeth. The city panicked after that. People talked about curses, rituals, ghosts, but I've hunted real monsters. They bleed, they breathe, and they break. The third victim, she was a waitress, 24 sweet, by all accounts, walked home after her shift, same way she always did. At 12 o'clock sharp, neighbors heard glass shatter. When they opened their doors, they found her body sprawled in the street. No robbery, no motive, just another perfectly timed corpse. And then came number 4, a cop, good one too, which makes him rare. He knew he was being hunted, called for backup 5 minutes before midnight. They found him dead anyway, badge clenched in his fist, eyes staring at a clock tower in the distance for nights, for lives, for different ways to die. The only thing connecting them was midnight. I've walked alleys stained with blood. I've stared into the eyes of killers who thought themselves gods. But this is different. This isn't murder for money, or anger, or lust. This is murder as ritual, murder as art. Someone's painting the city red, one stroke at a time, and the brush only moves when the clock strikes 12. So I watch, I listen, I stalk the streets while the rest of the city hides behind bolted doors. Midnight doesn't scare me. Midnight defines me. And if this killer wants to dance with the clock, then he just picked the wrong partner. I am the shadow that slips between seconds, the voice the dark swallows whole, the thing killers see in the corner of their eye before the lights go out for good. They think time is on their side. They're wrong, because tonight, when the clock strikes 12, I'll be waiting. Fear spreads faster than blood. That's the truth nobody wants to admit. One corpse on the pavement is a tragedy. 4 and 4 nights at the stroke of midnight. That's a plague. I've seen how fear warps a city. It slithers into the cracks, rides the air, seeps into the bones. People stop living and start waiting for the next scream, the next headline, the next clock to strike 12. And when the people stop breaking, so does the city. The victims weren't saints, but they weren't devils either. They were just people, the kind this city chews up and spits out every day. Take Marcus Doyle, the cabbie, 42, separated, worked 12-hour shifts to pay off child support and a mountain of debt. He lived for his daughter. Every dollar he made, every sleepless night behind the wheel, was for her. They found her teddy bear in the backseat of his cab the night he died. He was driving home from her birthday party. Balloons in the back window, blood on the steering wheel. I stared at that bear for a long time, longer than I should have. It had a pink ribbon around its neck. I kept thinking about how she must have hugged it to sleep that night, waiting for her father to call. How do you explain to a kid that the world doesn't care about fathers who work too hard, or daughters who wait too long? Then there was Samuel Price, the lawyer. People hated him. He was a shark, a vulture. He tore families apart with legal loopholes and padded his wallet with the wreckage. Some would say he deserved what he got. Maybe that's true, but death is still death, and I've learned not to cheer when it takes someone, because death doesn't stop to ask who deserves it. It just keeps taking. The waitress, Lila, she was kind, too kind for this city. She served me coffee once, didn't know who I was under the hood, just another tired soul with too many miles in his eyes. She smiled anyway, asked if I wanted cream and sugar. Nobody asks me questions like that. Nobody looks me in the eye and doesn't flinch. But she did, and now she's gone. A smile buried under broken glass. And Officer Grant. He wasn't corrupt, didn't take bribes, didn't sell drugs out the evidence locker. He was old, believed the badge still meant something. I respected him for that, even if we didn't see eye to eye. When his body hit the ground, the last piece of hope this department had fell with him. For different lives, no clear connection, but every one of them died at midnight sharp. The city noticed. They always notice. The streets emptied after sundown, bars closed early, neon signs flickered off. Families rushed home before the clock struck 12. Even the gangs and drug pushers vanished, too scared to hustle past curfew. For the first time, the city felt silent, and silence is dangerous. Silence means the dark has room to speak. I walked those empty streets. My boots echoed against pavement slick with rain. Windows slammed shut when I passed. I could feel them watching me from behind the glass. Their whispers crawling through the cracks. Shadow Man will stop him. Shadow Man has to stop him. They don't understand. I'm no savior. I bleed like they do. I break like they do. I'm just too stubborn to stay down. But when fear grips a city, people will cling to anything, even a shadow. I started hearing the stories. They spread faster than facts, because fear doesn't care about truth. Some said the Midnight Killer wasn't a man at all, that he was a ghost, a cursed spirit haunting the city, striking when the clock bled 12. Others swore it was a demon, summoned by the sins of the city, feeding on the weak until it grew strong enough to burn us all. And then there were the ones who whispered my name alongside his, said maybe Shadow Man was the killer, that maybe I'd finally snapped. After all, what's the difference between me and him? We both prowl at night, we both leave bodies in our wake. I pretended those whispers didn't cut, but they did. They always do, because they're not wrong. Sometimes, I wonder how thin the line really is. Hero, villain, protector, predator in the dark. Those words start to blur, and when the clock ticks louder, when the city stinks of blood, I start to wonder if maybe the only difference between me and the killer is that I choose my victims more carefully. Still, I hunt, because that's what I do. I walked through alleys, retraced steps, touched walls still slick with blood. Each crime scene felt deliberate, almost staged, like the killer wanted me to see it, like he was performing for me. And maybe he was. The message on Doyle's dashboard, time's up. The clock hand jammed into Price's mouth. Grant staring at the clock tower as if his last breath was stolen by its chime. These weren't random, they were breadcrumbs, and I was the rat chasing them. But every trail went cold, every lead led nowhere. No prints, no DNA, no witnesses. It was like the killer slipped through time itself, walking out of the second hand like smoke. That's when I realized the city wasn't just afraid of him, they were afraid of the clock. I saw it in their eyes. People flinched at alarms, at microwave timers, at church bells. They threw out their watches, turned clocks to the wall. Midnight became more than a time. It became a curse, and I carried it with me. I started counting the seconds without meaning to. Every time the sun went down, my pulse synced with the tick-tock of the world's heartbeat. By the time 11:30 rolled around, I could feel my chest tighten, my breath grow shallow, and when midnight hit, when the bells rang and the silence cracked, I braced myself for the scream. Even when it didn't come, I still heard it. That's the thing about fear. It doesn't stop when the killer does. It lingers, burrows into you, eats at you until you don't know if you're chasing the darkness or if it's chasing you. The victims were gone, but the fear they left behind was alive. It haunted me. It haunted the city. And maybe that was the point. Maybe the killer wasn't just murdering Bode. Maybe he was murdering time. Every killer leaves a trail. Some bleed it across the concrete. Others stitch it in silence. But one way or another, they all leave something behind. My job is to find it before the dirt swallows it whole. The problem was, this trail didn't behave like the others. It twisted, it taunted. Every time I thought I had my hands around the throat of a lead, it slipped like smoke between my fingers. Still, I kept chasing, because that's what I do. I started with the crime scenes. I always do. The cab Marcus Doyle's cab still sat in the impound yard when I got there. Rainwater pooled on its roof, trickling down the cracked windshield, like the city itself was weeping for him. The blood had dried, but I could still smell it, metallic, sharp, clinging to the leather seats like it was part of the car now. The message on the dashboard had been scrubbed, but not erased. Time's up, even faded. The letters carried weight. I traced my glove across the grooves where the killer's finger had dragged blood into words. It wasn't sloppy. It wasn't rushed. This was deliberate, practiced, like writing a signature. I pulled up Doyle's logbook. His last fare had been a woman, dropped off near the old train yard at 11:45 p.m. The yard was abandoned years ago. Nothing but rust and silence now. But midnight had followed Doyle home, which meant the killer didn't care where you were, only when you were. The lawyer next stop was Samuel Price's office. Sleek building, glass walls, cameras in every corner. Too bad cameras don't mean a damn thing when the tape goes dead at exactly midnight. I stood in the lobby where Price had collapsed, eyes scanning the marble floor. People had scrubbed it clean, but blood leaves more than stains. It leaves echoes. The clock above the reception desk read 12 o'clock, frozen, not broken, tampered. The killer had set it that way. Another signature. I knelt where Price's body had fallen, closed my eyes, tried to hear it. The tick of the clock, the static of the cameras, the gasp when his heart stopped. My pulse synced with the memory until I opened my eyes and whispered, "Why him? Why here?" The office files gave me nothing. Price had enemies, but so does every lawyer who makes a living gutting souls for profit. Too many suspects, none with the precision of midnight. The waitress Leela's diner was small, tucked into a corner of the east side, smelled of burnt coffee and fried grease even after they closed it down. Her co-workers left flowers out front, roses, daisies, lilies. The street looked like a graveyard that didn't know it was one yet. Her shift ended at 11:30. She punched her time card, smiled at the manager, and walked into the night. Witnesses said she hummed to herself. That part stuck with me, humming, like she had no idea death was timing her steps. The glass that shattered, it wasn't random. I measured the angle, thrown inward, not outward. She hadn't broken it. The killer had a distraction, something to make her pause, turn her head. By the time she realized, the clock had struck 12, and then she was gone. The Cupgrunt's apartment was cleaner than I expected. Bed made, shoes polished, badge on the dresser. He lived like the job owned him. Maybe it did. His last call was desperate, voice shaking. "It's midnight. He's here." That's all the dispatch log said before static swallowed it. But Grant wasn't stupid. If he knew he was being hunted, he would have fought, which meant the killer didn't just overpower him, he controlled the moment. Midnight was his weapon. I studied the view from Grant's window. The clock tower loomed in the distance, its hands locked at 12, always 12. I swear I felt it ticking in my skull even though the bells were silent. Dead ends for scenes, for corpses, for trails that led nowhere. No fingerprints, no footprints, no DNA. It was like the killer wore the night itself as gloves. I went to the morgue, stared down at cold flesh under white sheets. Doyle's throat, Price's blue lips, Leela's broken body, Grant's empty eyes. I memorized every wound, every line, every scar. I wanted them burned into me, so I'd never forget why I keep going. But even death kept its secrets. The city's detectives were no help. They've been drowning for years, and this case shoved their heads underwater. They whispered about demons and ghosts when they thought I wasn't listening, but I was. And the whispers made me wonder, because midnight didn't feel like coincidence anymore. It felt like worshipped up patterns in the dark, so I pulled out a map, spread it across the table in my hideout, marked every scene with red ink. Doyle, Price, Lila, Grant. Then I drew lines, north to south, east to west, connected dots like I was solving a child's puzzle, and something took shape. Not a circle, not a squared spiral. The scenes weren't random. There were steps in a pattern winding inward, toward what? I didn't know, but the killer was circling something, tightening the noose around some center. That's when it hit me, the clock tower. Every line pointed closer to it. The tower wasn't just a landmark, it was the heart of the city, built a century ago. Thousands of ticks, thousands of chimes. Midnight was its crown jewel, and maybe the killer was bowing to it. I lit a cigarette, let the smoke curl against the ceiling, stared at that spiral until my eyes burned, and I whispered, "You're not just killing, you're making a statement." But who are you talking to? Me, the city, or the clock itself? The weight of time. The more I hunted, the more the case hunted me. Sleep became a stranger. Food tasted like ash. Every second dragged me closer to the next midnight, the next body. I'd catch myself listening to the tick of my watch, to the hum of traffic lights, to the subtle rhythm of footsteps. I wasn't just tracking the killer anymore. I was tracking time itself, and the city knew it. The whispers grew louder. Some begged me to stop him. Others cursed my name, saying I drew the killer out, that the midnight murders were my fault, that he only existed because I did. And maybe they're right, because when I closed my eyes, When I let the dark wrap around me, I can almost feel him out there. Another shadow, another obsession, like two halves of the same broken mirror. The killer stalks the clock, I stalk the killer, and the city waits for one of us to bleed first. Patterns don't lie, people do, evidence does, but patterns, they tell the truth, even if it's a truth you don't want to hear. I kept staring at that spiral on the map, lines crisscrossing, every victim pulling me closer to the clock tower. At first I thought the tower was just a symbol, a place the killer worshipped, but the more I stared, the more I realized it wasn't just about the tower, it was about me. I've been doing this long enough to know when a case turns personal, when the killer stops being satisfied with corpses and starts playing games with me. That's what this felt like, a dance, and I was the only partner he wanted. The clock tower meant something to me too. It always had. When I was 12, my father took me there. He said the tower was the only thing in this city that kept its promises. Every hour, every day, it struck without fail. He told me, clocks don't lie, they keep moving, even when people stop. 2 nights later, he stopped moving. A junkie's knife, a dirty alley, a silence that lasted forever. Midnight was when the cops knocked on my door to tell me I was alone now. I hated clocks after that. Every tick felt like a reminder. Every chime, a hammer driving the truth deeper into me. Time doesn't heal. Time just takes. So when I saw that spiral, when I realized the killer was wending it toward the same tower that scarred me, I knew this wasn't random. This was pointed. I dug deeper into the victims' pasts. Not their jobs, not their families, their records. Doyle, the cabbie, once arrested for a bar fight back in his 20s. Guess who the arresting officer was? Grant, the cop. Lila, the waitress, her landlord. Samuel Price, the lawyer, the same one who hounded her mother for rent until she died. Broken, bitter connections, thin but there, all of them tied by old sins, small scars the city forgot. And me, I'd crossed paths with all of them too. Doyle once drove me when I was tailing a suspect. Lila served me coffee. Price tried to have me arrested after I put one of his clients in the hospital. Grant, he once had me in his crosshairs before realizing I was after the same man. It was all too neat, too deliberate. Someone wasn't just killing at midnight. Someone was cutting along the seams of my own life. The letter then came. The letter dart. It showed up at my door. No postage, no fingerprints. Just slid under like a gift from the dark. Black envelope, white card inside. Only one sentence, written in neat block letters. Meet me at the tower. Midnight or more will fall. No signature. Didn't need one. I could feel his breath in the ink. For the first time, I hesitated, because this wasn't just a hunt anymore. This was a summons. I lit a cigarette, let the smoke burn my throat. I asked myself the question I always avoid. Why me? Maybe the killer thought we were the same. Maybe he wanted me to understand him. Or maybe he just wanted to prove that no matter how many bodies I saved, I could never outrun the ticking hand of the clock. And a part of me, the part I bury deep, the part I pretend doesn't exist, wondered if he was right. Because I've killed too. I don't like admitting it, but justice in this city doesn't always survive courtroom wars. Sometimes, it only survives in the shadows. And when I put a man in the ground, I tell myself it's different, that I'm protecting, that I'm saving. But what if he tells himself the same thing? What if the only difference between us is that his stage is midnight and mine is the whole damn night? I traced the spiral again, finger following the path from Doyle to Price to Leela to Grant. The center glared back at me. The tower. The killer wasn't just circling the tower, he was circling me. Every victim was a mirror, reflecting some part of my world back at me. A cab ride, a cup of coffee, a courtroom threat, a standoff with a cop, little fragments of my life, stitched into his murders. It wasn't about midnight, it wasn't about them, it was about me and the city. The city was just collateral. That night, I sat on the roof across from the tower. Rain poured in sheets, streaking neon down the streets below. The bells loomed silent above me, hands frozen at 12. My watch ticked against my wrist, each second digging into my skin like a blade. I knew I had a choice. Ignore the summons and watch more bodies fall, or walk into the lion's den and see if the lion bled like the rest. I took a long drag, exhaled smoke into the storm. Fear whispered, "You're not ready." Anger whispered, "End him now." And somewhere between the two, a darker voice whispered something else entirely. What if you see yourself in him? Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. But either way, when the clock struck midnight, I'd be there, not because I wanted to, because I had to. Asterisk. The city held its breath the night I walked to the tower. Rain slicked the streets in sheets of silver. Neon lights flickered against puddles, broken colors twisting like shattered glass. Every step I took echoed against the empty pavement, as if the city itself wanted me to hear its heartbeat. And then the bells loomed above me, tall, ancient, and patient. The clock tower, the spiral's center, the stage the killer had chosen. I climbed the stone steps, boots slapping against wet granite. My gloves gripped the rail. My lungs burned with every breath. By the time I reached the heavy wooden doors, my watch ticked against my wrist. 11:57. 3 minutes, I pushed the doors open. The hinges groaned like a warning. Inside, the air smelled of rust and dust, old gears and forgotten prayers. The tower had been abandoned for years, but tonight it felt alive, alive, and waiting. I stepped into the shadows, every sense sharpened. My boots scuffed against the stone floor, my ears strained for movement, breath, the shuffle of feet. Nothing, but the silence wasn't empty. It was charged, like a wire humming before it snaps. Las 11:58. I moved toward the stairs, spiraling upward. My hand brushed the wall, damp stone, cold against my glove. Step after step, the spiral tightened, drawing me higher. My chest rose and fell with the rhythm of the clock. At the top, the gears groaned faintly. The great machine frozen at 12, a broken titan, a corpse of time. And then I heard it, a voice. Low. Calm, familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. You came. He stepped out of the dark, black coat, gloves, hood, shadowing his face. But I didn't need to see it. The way he stood still, centered, like the world revolved around him, told me everything. The Midnight Killer. I spoke before I thought. My voice came out like gravel dragged across steel. You've been circling me. He smiled. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it in his tone. Not circling, drawing you in. Every stroke of midnight was a step closer to this moment. And now, here we are. 11:59. The gears trembled. The air grew heavier, as if the tower itself was bracing for impact. Why? I demanded. Why them? Why this city? Why me? He tilted his head. Because you understand. You know what it means to live by the clock, to be ruled by it, to hate it, to become it. Every second is a thief, every chime a death. I wanted you to see it, to feel it, to accept that we are the same. I clenched my fists. We're not the same. His laugh was soft, almost pitying. You kill, too. You hunt in the dark. You decide who deserves to breathe and who doesn't. The only difference is that you lie to yourself about why. I don't. Midnight strips away lies. That's why I choose it. At midnight, all truths bleed. 12 o'clock, the bells roared. He moved first, a flash of steel, knife glinting in the lightning that split the sky through the tower's cracks. I dodged, the blade slicing air where my throat had been a heartbeat before. My fists drove into his ribs, but he absorbed it, twisted, and slammed his elbow into my jaw. Pain burst white behind my eyes. I staggered back. The bells thundered again, each strike a hammer, each hammer a heartbeat. He lunged. I caught his wrist, twisted, forced the knife toward his chest, but he was strong, stronger than I expected. He shoved me back, the blade scraping my armor. We crashed into the gears. Iron teeth ground against each other, sparks spitting. The tower shuddered like it wanted blood as badly as he did. He whispered as we fought. You hear it too, Day. The ticking, the truth. Midnight owns us. I grunted, slamming my head into his hooded face. Bone cracked. He reeled, but didn't fall. I spat blood. Midnight owns you, not me. The knife came again. I grabbed his arm, twisted until the bone popped. The blade clattered to the floor, sliding into the shadows. But he didn't scream. He laughed. You can't kill me. If you do, you prove me right. If you don't, I'll keep killing. Either way, I win. The bells struck again. The sound shook my chest, rattled my bones. My mind screamed for release, for violence, for silence. And then I understood. This wasn't about killing him. It was about breaking his pattern, so I didn't strike the killing blow. Instead, I grabbed him, held him against the gears. Iron teeth clamped around his coat, dragging him in. He thrashed, cursed, tried to claw free. I stared into his eyes as the gears closed around him, pinning him like a bug under glass. Midnight doesn't own me, I growled. It ends with you. With a final shove, I locked the gears in place. He wasn't dead, not yet, but he was trapped, bound by the very clock he worshipped. The bells screamed their last note. Midnight was over. The tower fell silent. The rain outside softened. My watch ticked past 12, into 12:01, and for the first time in weeks, there was no scream, no corpse, no fear. I stood over him, chest heaving, blood dripping from my lip. He glared at me through broken teeth. This isn't over, he hissed. You can't fight time. You are time. I turned away, my shadow stretching long against the gears. Maybe, but tonight, time chose me. and then I left him there, bound in his own prison. As the city exhaled in relief, the rain didn't stop when I left the tower. It never does. This city doesn't get clean, it just stays wet, slick, heavy with the weight of everything it hides. I walked the streets, the bells still echoing in my skull. Midnight had come and gone. For the first time in weeks, the city hadn't bled. No fresh bodies, no new spiral. But peace isn't something I believe in. Peace is just the silence between screams. The Midnight Killer was alive, caged inside the very gears he worshipped. The cops would find him eventually, or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe the tower would eat him alive, grind him down until nothing but bones and dust remained. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore still. The words he spat lingered. You killed too. You are time. You can't escape the ticking. I wanted to ignore them, wanted to bury them under whiskey, smoke, and the next case that would inevitably claw its way to me. But the truth is, he wasn't completely wrong. I've killed, I'll kill again. Some nights, the line between me and the monsters I hunt blurs so thin I can barely see it. And maybe he saw that in me. Maybe that's why he chose me. But here's the difference. I don't kill for patterns. I don't kill for pleasure. I kill because sometimes it's the only way to stop the bleeding. I kill so the next oil, the next Leela, the next Grant doesn't fall at the hands of someone like him. That's what I tell myself. Anyway, the city will never thank me. Hell, half the time it fears me more than it fears the killers. I stop. That's fine. I don't do this for thanks. I do it because I know what it's like to wait for midnight, terrified that something's coming and nobody's there to save you. I know what it's like to feel alone, to think the world forgot you, and I won't let anyone else feel that way, not while I'm still breathing. That's the truth that separates me from him, not the darkness, I've got plenty of that, not the violence, I've bled enough to drown in it. The difference is choice. He chose to be a clock, grinding people down because time ground him down first. Me. I choose to stand in front of that clock and hold it back, even if it breaks me. The watch on my wrist ticks steady. 12:07 now, a reminder that time always moves forward, whether we want it to or not. But tonight, for a handful of strangers who'll never know my name, time was on their side. Midnight came and went, and they woke up still breathing. That's enough. I light a cigarette, let the smoke sting my lungs. Somewhere, sirens wail. Somewhere else, someone cries. The city doesn't sleep, and neither do I. I walk into the rain, into the shadows, into whatever waits next, because that's what I am, not the hero, not the monster, not the clock dots, just the shadow in between. The tower fell silent. The rain outside softened. My watch ticked past 12, into 12:01, and for the first time in weeks, there was no scream, no corpse, no fear. I stood over him, chest heaving, blood dripping from my lip. He glared at me through broken teeth. This isn't over, he hissed. You can't fight time. You are time. I turned away, my shadow stretching long against the gears. Maybe, but tonight, time chose me. And then I left him there, bound in his own prison. As the city exhaled in relief, the rain didn't stop when I left the tower. It never does. This city doesn't get clean. It just stays wet, slick, heavy with the weight of everything it hides. I walked the streets, the bells still echoing in my skull. Midnight had come and gone. For the first time in weeks, the city hadn't bled. No fresh bodies, no new spiral. But peace isn't something I believe in. Peace is just the silence between screams. The Midnight Killer was alive, caged inside the very gears he worshipped. The cops would find him eventually, or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe the tower would eat him alive, grind him down until nothing but bones and dust remained. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore still. The words he spat lingered. You killed too. You are time. You can't escape the ticking. I wanted to ignore them, wanted to bury them under whiskey, smoke, and the next case that would inevitably claw its way to me. But the truth is, he wasn't completely wrong. I've killed, I'll kill again. Some nights, the line between me and the monsters I hunt blurs so thin I can barely see it. And maybe he saw that in me. Maybe that's why he chose me. But here's the difference. I don't kill for patterns. I don't kill for pleasure. I kill because sometimes it's the only way to stop the bleeding. I kill so the next oil, the next Leela, the next Grant doesn't fall at the hands of someone like him. That's what I tell myself. Anyway, the city will never thank me. Hell, half the time it fears me more than it fears the killers. I stop. That's fine. I don't do this for thanks. I do it because I know what it's like to wait for midnight, terrified that something's coming and nobody's there to save you. I know what it's like to feel alone, to think the world forgot you, and I won't let anyone else feel that way, not while I'm still breathing. That's the truth that separates me from him, not the darkness, I've got plenty of that, not the violence, I've bled enough to drown in it. The difference is choice. He chose to be a clock, grinding people down because time ground him down first. Me. I choose to stand in front of that clock and hold it back, even if it breaks me. The watch on my wrist ticks steady. 12:07 now. A reminder that time always moves forward, whether we want it to or not. But tonight, for a handful of strangers who'll never know my name, time was on their side. Midnight came and went, and they woke up still breathing. That's enough. I light a cigarette, let the smoke sting my lungs. Somewhere, sirens wail. Somewhere else, someone cries. The city doesn't sleep, and neither do I. I walk into the rain, into the shadows, into whatever waits next, because that's what I am, the hero. Not the monster, not the clock dots, just the shadow in between.